Today's Patreon shoutout goes to Z. Teysa Orzhov Scion versus Anawan the Ruin Thief. And we can draw some cards, we can tutor, let's definitely keep that. Rather not tutor for a white source, but we will if we have to. So let's just get down the Viscerous Seer. A Shizo from our opponent, and we get into the white source that we need, so we'll play that and we'll go for the Knight's Whisper. We've definitely got our commander next turn if we want it. And we draw into the Orzhov Signet. We've got Bloodghast as well, so I probably go for a tutor onto the Skull Clamp. This is one of my favourite decks to play, but I never play it because no one watches when I upload these videos. A Felwar Stone from our opponent. Alright, and a Painter's Servant. So it has to be Ancient Tomb into the Orzhov Signet, I think. And then maybe we just get our commander into play. Swing in at our opponent again. And next turn, we've got a stop on the upkeep. So, yeah, we're probably looking at a tutor. We can... I think we might be able to go Clamp onto the Bloodghast after we've played it next turn. Our opponent's got double blue at this point, so I don't know if they're going to hold up that blue or go for the Anawan, going for Invisible Stalker, which can't be blocked, and it's going to have haste potentially. If they drop a land next turn, they can put haste and hexproof onto their Anawan. Let's go Vampiric Tutor. And that takes us into the Skull Clamp, of course. We'll have to make double black here so that we can go for the Bloodghast, and we haven't made a land yet, so we want to be drawing a land with this Bloodghast. That triggers our Teysa. We start making spirits and we draw cards, of course. There is a land, so we'll get the Bloodghast back out. And then there's always an argument to be made for not going for Bloodghast into the graveyard on your opponent's turn, just in case they've got graveyard hate, but might be that they've got reanimator stuff in this deck because the rogue deck does want to mill us. So maybe they don't have graveyard hate. Alright, Cabal Coffers. We've got 3 swamps, so that's not too bad. And we can sacrifice Teysa to her own ability, so yeah, let's turn in sideways with that. Don't think we're going to use the sacrifice clause, but yeah, we might do if we don't want to face down the commander. We've actually got infinite next turn, haven't we? Painter's Savant can make all of our stuff black, so we can sacrifice spirits over and over again, and they replace themselves, so we've got infinite scry there. So then if we get into an aristocrat effect, we can draw into it, play it, and then get infinite on our opponent. Thieving Skydiver is going to steal our Skull Clamp. We don't necessarily need that, although... yeah, if we want to scry something onto the top next turn, then we'd like to draw it with the Skull Clamp, so that's... yeah. Yeah, we'd obviously rather keep that. Anyway, they go up to 5 cards in hand. Then an Animate Dead onto our Bloodghast, so we were right, they do have some graveyard interaction that goes with the mill. We don't have anywhere near as much use for Bloodghast anymore now that the Skull Clamp is gone, but we could always play a land, reanimate it, sacrifice it to get a spirit, so it's just taking things away from us ultimately. Pokers for 1 with the Invisible Stalker, because they're never going to block with that. Okay, Darksteel Mutation. If we go Painter's Servant, we'll have the infinite Painter's Servant. We can hold up Call of the Coppercoats for on our opponent's turn, and then we can go for the infinite scries and try and get into some kind of aristocrat effect. So I think we're fine just dropping the Painter's Servant here, and we'll say black. And then we'll just throw in the plains here. Don't particularly care about Cabal Coffers until we get another swamp. Swing in with some spirits and the Teysa. Now with Call of the Coppercoats, we can make a couple of creatures at the moment, hoping that that will be more during this turn, but if we make a few creatures, then we've got infinite sacrifices on the Teysa, assuming that they can't respond. Alright, a mana vault. Hitting us with the invisible stalker again, not particularly bothered about that. Although they've got ninjutsu, probably a Yuriko. Nope, it's something bigger than that. It is Fallen Shinobi. And this one is exile the top 2 cards until end of turn. You can play them without paying the mana cost. D-Spark on that is pretty good, I think. Are they going to play a creature after this? Don't think they can afford their commander, so maybe we go Call of the Coppercoats right now. And that will make us some human soldiers. Then we could use the D-Spark, but this is a creature, of course, so we'll point the Teysa at the creature, get rid of the human soldiers because they'll be replaced by spirits, which are obviously better because they've got flying. So we get the exile, we get the spirits into play. We can get rid of any creature we want at this point. And they go Gilded Drake. Let's see what they point the Gilded Drake at first. Okay, pointing it at our Teysa, so we'll sacrifice the Teysa to its own ability. Do we want to go for... Let's go for the Infinite Scries now first. Alright, and there was no assault from our opponent or anything, which is always a blessing. They say good game. All we do there, like I said, is cycle through the deck, which might take us an age on Magic Online, but we basically put some kind of aristocrat effect on top. Zula put Cutthroat, Blood Artist, Bastion of Remembrance, I think, is the enchantment that does it. And then we would have to recast our commander, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mana. And then we'd have the Cabal Coffers, so that would be... we'd go for a Blood Artist or a Zulaport Cutthroat then, because we would have sacrificed our commander to the Gilded Drake. Play that back out, get the aristocrat effect, go infinite. That's that. So that was a fun one. Haven't played Teysa Orzhov Scion in a long time. Let's play another one. Okay, game 2, this time up against Perforos, God of the Forge, which is always worrying. Similar hand to last game. Tainted Field, can we get into a swamp? Yeah, we're on the play, so might have to get rid of that one, unfortunately. Okay, that's not terrible. Do we care about Wrath of God? We might do, because Perforos wants to get down a lot of tokens. I think I'm going to risk getting rid of the Wrath there. So we'll go for a tap land to start things off. Want to get as many swamps into play for this Cryptghast as we can. Just a mountain from our opponent. Let's get another swamp with this. And we'll challenge our opponent to having a Lightning Ball or Flame Slash or something for the Painter's Servant. Again, naming black with that, so that we can do all the stuff that we did previously. A Rolling Vortex. Each player's upkeep, 1 damage to them. Whenever the player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, then it's 5 to that player. Can't gain life yet. Okay. Just going to peck away at us. Another swamp, so we're looking good with this Cryptghast. If they... Does this affect them? So whenever a player... I was just thinking of if they get into a mana crypt, they might be able to play Perforos next turn. All we can do here is hold up Anguished Unmaking, but I don't think they're getting down Perforos next turn, so let's go for the Teysa. We'll just have to hope that they don't get into one of the 3 mana board wipes. Hordling Outburst. Getting some tokens into play without their commander, that's fine with me. So I think we're just going to ramp here. Monastery Mentor triggers on non-creature spells, but we can do Monastery Mentor and Anguished Unmaking if we've got the mana doubler in play. So let's go Caves of Koilos and go for the Cryptghast. And then we're just holding everything back because we don't want them to gang up on Teysa or the Painter's Servant. Noteworthy that they've got Castle Embrith now. And again, noteworthy, they've got a Rakdos Torbran. So that will be 3 damage from each of these. Might have to use that removal on the Torbran, unfortunately. Knocking us all the way down to 14. And Elesh Norn 2, 4, 6, 7 and 8. Oh, Elish Norn is pretty good. And then the extort. There's no point in taking 1 damage just to extort. I mean, it's free, isn't it? So, yeah, we might as well take our opponent down a point of life here. We're showing them that we don't have swords or paths, so argument to be made for not doing that. But I've got a feeling that every point of damage is going to matter here. So let's see if they want to trade us a Torbran for a bit of damage. They do not, so we knock them down to 15. We've got a good race going on here. Their Red Wraths are going to be slightly worse now, thanks to the Elish Norn being in play. They'll need something like Blasphemous Act or Chain Reaction, I would imagine. They scoop to that, don't even try to get down their Perforos. Yeah, I mean, if they just go Perforos, they probably have to get down a bunch of tokens the turn after, which probably still won't do it, and we've got an answer for their Perforos anyway, not that they knew that. Yeah, the Elish Norn was pretty good there, apparently. I think we can try one more, and we'll call it a day there. Third game here, Nicol Bolas the Ravager this time, which is always a difficult matchup. I'm not sure how good the Skull Clamp is going to be with that hand. If the Ashnod's Altar was an Orzhov Signet, Arcane Signet, then I'd probably keep that, but we need our colours and we need something to do with Skull Clamp straight off the top, so yeah, I'm not too hopeful with that hand. Even less hopeful with that one. Yeah, if we get into a land, we could go Arcane Signet though. Yeah, just for the sake of giving ourselves a little bit of a handicap, not to patronise my opponent. Don't think we need to patronise our opponent, but just for the sake of not winning this one potentially, we'll keep this hand and get rid of Raise the Alarm. So we're desperate for a land off the top here. We play the Volrath Stronghold. I went through the deck again, haven't updated this deck in many years, so I don't think I went through the mana base. I'll have to have a flick through that. Duress. We'll get rid of our Arcane Signet, you would think. And if it does that, then we are not looking good, unless we rip some land straight off the top. It does get rid of Arcane Signet, so we're going to watch Nicol Bolas play, I would think. We were getting into a land too. They know what we drew into there. We've got answers for their Nicol Bolas at least. We might be able to drag it out long enough. Alright, Bitter Blossom is good to have. Let's see if they've got an answer for the Painter's Servant. Probably should have played that last turn while they were shields down. I would think our opponent would know that this was infinite, so alright, letting it down. We name black again. 3 games in a row in which we've had Painter's Servant. I wouldn't have minded them countering that because it's less likely that they'll counter the Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom might give us enough free value in order to get us back into this. Well, accelerating ahead of us on mana. Alright, and there's a swamp as well. They've got blue held up, could be a mana leak or something like that, but let's go for the Bitter Blossom. I'd be half tempted, and that comes down really quickly, so that suggests that they don't have anything. We'll poke them for 1. I'd be half tempted to go for the Path to Exile onto our Painter's Servant just to ramp, but it might not be the cleverest idea anyone's ever come up with. Jace the Mind Sculptor. Yeah, we've got a Vindicate for that, and our opponent knows it. They don't go for bouncing. We could screw up their colours, actually, with the Vindicate. Maybe we do that over the Jace, although they're likely to get into another blue source with the Jace, aren't they? So we probably just get rid of that with Vindicate. So we get a Fairy Rogue at the beginning of the turn. We're doing well with the lands. I'd like to challenge them to not have a blue source or to have a blue source. They didn't play a land last turn actually, so maybe we encourage them to minus down the Jace to bounce our creatures. Yeah, I'm just going to play it greedy here because we've won a couple of games quite comfortably, so just for the sake of an interesting game, let's swing in at the Jace. We'll let them keep it for a turn. And let's Vindicate their land. They know both the cards that are in our hand. Alright, there's a Talisman. That is a blue source. They still haven't made a land, although they're more likely to make one there. would have gone, if I was playing really seriously, then we would have gone for the Jace there, because they've got so much card draw that they're likely to get into another land, and they're likely for it to be a blue one. But they go for the Brainstorm here, so we can take out Jace next turn. Alright, and there we go. Yeah, they did get into another blue source, so they've got the double blue again. and an is it Signet? Well, we can get rid of the Jace at least. Oketra's Monument is good. We can start making some white tokens that we can sacrifice to the Teysa. Makes our Teysa cheaper as well. Take out the Jace here. And then we'll go for the Oketra's Monument, because it is some ramp, and we'll get a token when we cast our commander next turn. Our commander will only be 2 mana with that in play. Alright, so that is Fiery Confluence. I'm assuming it's 2 damage to us and destroy a couple of artifacts. We could sacrifice in order to ramp, but I think our opponent's playing around our removal, so we'll continue to have them do that. Oh, it was 1 damage to each creature to take out the fairy tokens. That's fair enough. They get into a Scryland. The only saving grace here really is that we've got an enchantment, and the Grixis players aren't going to do too well against enchantments. Let's throw down the Teysa, and then we've got a stop on the upkeep, so we could grab the Painter's Servant back with this if we wanted to. Throw down the Windbrisk Heights, which is another piece of white mana, which is really good. Cryptghast, what do we need to trigger this with? You have to have attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn, so we should be able to do that in the next few turns. So yeah, let's just go for Cryptghast underneath there. Well, it's a different Nicol Bolas. That one is the God Pharaoh, and each opponent exiles 2 cards from their hand. So that's probably the end of us, but we were expecting to lose this one anyway. Do we want to take back the Painter's Servant? I don't think it really matters, to be honest, because we're not getting into white stuff. We want some white tokens, really. That's a white creature that we're nowhere near casting. Next turn, we'll be able to get out the Cryptghast, and then we might be able to start looking at this, but it's probably too late for us at that point. They'll probably exile our hand again. So we'll swing in at the Nicol Bolas and just knock that down by 3 loyalty. 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. Alright, going for the other plus instead. Target opponent exiles the top card of their library until they exile a non-land. Until the end of the turn you can cast it without paying its mana cost, so I'm guessing they don't have much of anything in hand. They get our Vamp Tutor, so casting that straight away. And a Consecrated Sphinx, excellent. So during our turn they're going to draw into what they just tutored for. We get a Lingering Souls, which is a means of going for some white stuff. Do we need to get rid of our Teysa in order to get the mana doubler into play? We'll have 2, 4, 6 and 7 mana next turn if we get the Cryptghast into play. I don't think so. I think we just need to go Lingering Souls this turn. So let's play that. We can actually get rid of the Consecrated Sphinx this turn. So let's play the flashback on that straight away. Now the question is, do we give them more card draw and go for the Painter's Servant next turn and just exile any creature we like? What's the minus on this? 7 damage to a target opponent, creature an opponent controls, or planeswalker an opponent controls, so they could get rid of our Teysa with that. I think that's our only out at this point, so just for the fun of it, we'll do that. Exiling the top card of our library again, and this time getting a Sol Ring from us. So they play that straight away. Then they've got their own Vampiric Tutor. Still not sure what they tutored for previously yet. Aminatu's Augury. Exile the top 8 cards of your library, put a land from amongst them onto the battlefield. For each non-land card type, you can cast a spell of that type without paying the mana cost, so this should really be the end of us here. They exile... There's the mana leak we mentioned. There is Karn, Scion of Urza, a Trinket Mage, Mana Crypt, Imperial Seal, another tutor, Decree of Annihilation. Yeah, going straight for the Decree of Annihilation. So our only out really was for us to go for the Painter's Servant back on top with the Volrath Stronghold, but we either did it on our previous turn and we couldn't get the Spirit tokens out and ready, or we do it the way we did do it and now we don't have the Volrath Stronghold held up. So yeah, our opponent's just accelerated ahead of us. Well, we get to keep our Bitter Blossom at least, because red doesn't touch enchantments usually. The limit break on this is exile each non-land permanent your opponents control, so that'll get rid of it. And then they've got the, what is it called? They've got card advantage with this Karn. Trinket Mage gets them into more mana. And obviously the Mana Crypt as well, so let's just play this out for the sake of it. I mean, we can't come back from this, can we? We lost this game a long time ago, but just for the sake of interest, we'll see how far we can get. A Demonic Tutor. They've got hand disruption on us with the Nicol Bolas, so we're never going to get a tutor off, even if we did get into some lands and fast mana and stuff. They get our Viscera Seer. So we had some good cards on the top. We had a tutor, and we had the tutor, the Viscera Seer. We could have got the Painter's Servant back online, so if it wasn't for the Decree of Annihilation, I dare say we might have been able to come back from that, surprisingly. Yeah, we just give them the Blood Crypt there. Alright, and they are swinging in, so that's good. Let's, yeah, we'll take it, whatever. Just playing this out for the interest of anyone who wants to see what our opponent's deck does here. I think we've pretty much seen what our opponent's deck does. A Tainted Field. So we're going to need to get into a swamp if we want to do anything with that. Fairy can go at the Karn, sacrificing our Viscera Seer to get a Scry 1. Then minusing down with the Karn to get the Dark Slick Shores as well, so I'm guessing they haven't drawn into a land. Now getting our Darkest Hour, so like I said, we're getting good cards off the top, or our opponent is at least. We would have been getting good cards off the top. So the deck sort of performed well. And then trading that out for a Fallen Shinobi, similar to the last game. And they get off the top, that's what I was fishing for previously. Elspeth Sun's Champion. And they take our D-Spark away from us, which we couldn't have gotten into play anyway. There is Bastion of Remembrance, can't do anything. So let's get rid of this Karn Scion of Urza. Our opponent can minus down with the Nicol Bolas. If they decide to minus down and exile each non-land permanent of ours, then I'll probably just scoop it up at that. Yeah, there we go, going for the minus. Oh, they probably got us here anyway. 5, and that is 11, so yeah, they've got us here anyway. So good game to our opponent. That was an interesting one. Hopefully you all enjoyed those games as well. Like I said, no one ever watches the Teysa Orzhov Scion games anyway, but it's one of my favourite decks, so I decided to be selfish and play a game that I want to play for once. If you did enjoy it, please consider going to Patreon with the link in the description below. You can support monetarily there if you want to. Big thank you to my patrons for supporting, the ones that are currently supporting. Big thank you to you if you decide to do that as well. Don't forget to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe as well to support the channel and push it through to other potential viewers. I'm Tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.